Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I have another banger of a B2B episode lined up for you today, and I would love to introduce Andy Martin from Corevist to the podcast. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here as well. You're the CEO and on the BOD at Corevist. But before we get into what Corevist is and does and how you've been building up this company, tell us a little bit about your background, how you even came to be in this e-commerce space at all. As I understand it, you didn't take the traditional, I don't know if there is a traditional route into e-commerce. Right. Most of the people I know, including myself, there's no such thing as that traditional route. Most people don't go to university and study e-commerce and then go straight into e-commerce, and that's what they do for the rest of their career. So we all take a kind of a circuitous route into this industry. So I'd love to know a little bit more about how you came to be in e-commerce.
Sure. I think it's a good question. And I'm going to take you back to the beginning because all of it matters and influences the reason I'm in this chair today. So first, I was actually born in Cuba. So I'm a Cuban immigrant that was raised in Los Angeles. When I grew up, my first experiences were West Point and being an Army artillery officer. And after that, I did 2 stints in Fortune 500 companies where I learned really good best practices. And one was focused on programming and the other one was focused on marketing. So one was PW and the other one was Kraft Foods. And so very different, but I was able to blend 2 things not at the same time, but in succession. What I learned there about myself was that I'm a go-to-market junkie. And that word wasn't even used back when I was at Kraft Foods. But I really do enjoy understanding the problems of the customers and then figuring out how can I tailor my solution to making it work. So that was lesson number 1. When I left Kraft Foods, I went to work for a small company that no one had ever heard of, and I was the president of it. And then I discovered my second passion in life, that I love being an entrepreneur. It was like a kick in the pants, nothing like it, but I needed those other experiences to have given me the structure and kind of the confidence to say, okay, I know how to do this. And it was always about saying, all right, the big Fortune 500 does these 50,000 things, and it's important because they have a broad, big scale. How do I take the 10 that are important to my little operation and then drive it? And I was fortunate enough to learn from a great mentor. And then I launched my own company, which was called Utopia. And I co-founded it with 2 other guys. And we laughed because it was a 17-year overnight success. Right? Everyone always heard about the payday and this and that, but it was really a huge journey. That company was a services company in the SAP ecosystem. So this is going to directly link to why I'm in this chair. And I couldn't spell SAP when we started. I thought that was sap that grew on trees. I didn't realize just the power of that technology and the employees that work there. And so we grew it. It was global, 500 employees, global. And ultimately, it was sold to the Prometheus Group for over $100 million. And it was a private sale, and it was terrific. And at that point, Andy Martin was done. It was like, okay, I am going to go, I don't know.
Bag. I can look out for my family for the rest of my life. I've done pretty well for myself. I don't have to work again if I don't want to.
I'm good to go. Let me go see what else is out there in the world. At this point, the venture capital community started to knock on my door and said, hey, what do you want to do next? I'm like, next? I just finished. Nothing. I said, look, we have an interesting company in Raleigh, North Carolina called Corevist. Can you check it out for us? And I'm like, sure. Okay. So I spoke with the CEO who was the founder, and I came back. I'm like, yeah, they're solving a legitimate problem, and they seem to have a good group of guys. What do you need me for? Well, we'd like you to operate it. We want to buy it and you can operate it. I'm like, okay. So a little bit, it wasn't exactly what I had planned to do, but I said yes. And I'll tell you why I said yes. I was looking for 4 things. 1, I didn't want it to be a startup because I know startups are incredibly difficult and I just didn't want to go there. 2, I wanted a management team. I wanted an existing management team. I said, geez, I don't really want to go recruit everyone from my old network. Let me have a working management team. 3, I needed money because obviously venture capital companies they're looking for one thing only, and that's growth. And so I needed some funding. And four, which this will surprise most people, I wanted a company that had what I considered a weak go-to-market. And you may be saying, why? And I'm like, because that's an area that I
That's the
thought
part
I
I
could
can.
go.
That's the part I can
That's
put
what I
power
can do.
to.
I'm not going to code, but I can go do this. I can leverage my networks, my relationships, and more importantly, just my general knowledge of how to partner with bigger players in a large ecosystem when you're selling to enterprises. And so I stepped in, and in April of 2022, I replaced Sam Baer, who was the founder. He had wanted to retire, so this worked out great. And here we are today. And I can tell you the ups and downs and exactly where we're headed or where we're trying to go in this ocean called B2B e-commerce, digital commerce, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, that's how I'm in this chair today.
What an exciting journey. And I think where this intersects with things that my audience are heavily interested in is the commerce piece and the fact that you were able to stay in the SAP ecosystem because, as I understand it, in all transparency, I've never worked with the Corevist platform before, so I'm not directly familiar with it, so I'm just going by what's on the tin, so to speak. But as I understand it, you are a B2B, primarily B2B focused e-commerce platform that has a native integration with SAP. So you're very, very focused on the SAP ecosystem. Manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, obviously SAP is very strong in this arena to begin with from an ERP, CRM perspective. They're very strong in this arena, particularly in Europe, hugely strong. But then there is not all merchants that run SAP in the back office necessarily want to run SAP Commerce Cloud, Hybris, and as a result of that, there are multiple other platforms in the world that have sprung up as part of this SAP or this wider SAP ecosystem that plug into core SAP as the back office engine powering the commerce experience. And as I understand it, that's exactly what Corevist does. They provide effectively shopping and buyer portals on top of the core SAP platform.
Bang on. I couldn't have said it better myself. What's interesting is that some people will say, oh, so you only work with SAP ERP. That is a correct statement. But then they'll say, doesn't SAP offer a great product, whether it's Hybris, obviously it's now it's Commerce Cloud. Yes, they do. But despite that fact, Corevist is in the SAP App Store. Why? Because SAP realized that sometimes it doesn't make sense or the customer has a preference to not want to run SAP Commerce Cloud, and they're looking for a lighter weight solution that does almost everything. And then they say, hey, this Corevist platform actually can work. If the use case is B2B focused, Corevist is really good as any of the larger, better known brands. If it's a B2C solution, Corevist is not the ideal one. It's not the way the technology was built. It's not the user experiences that we've perfected. This company was founded in 2008, and it was always directly connected into SAP, always a buying experience, not necessarily a shopping experience, always a buying experience that was highly personalized to that business user. And we've stuck to our knitting and stayed there. And even when I took over as a CEO, I've said, yes, this is the area we want to play in. And what we've done now is just offered more integrations. And I can get into that too, because that's been a change from what I saw in 2022 and what I had been told happened in 21. I wasn't there at the time. And then what I'm seeing in the marketplace now, particularly in the sectors that we're chasing. So Corevist traditionally had said, we're going to go after, we're going to service mid-market manufacturers and distributors, as you had said. In the SAP world, that looks like 50 million to 2 billion in revenue. In our case, we're pretty much right there. I actually looked it up right before this podcast, and our average sized customer is just under $1 billion. So we're pretty much there. And what I noticed too was that in our more recent kind of conversations in the marketplace, we have been now moving up, if you will. And I noticed that the $100 million size companies, they're okay and want an all-in-one solution. They're like, thank God this actually links directly with the SAP. We're happy. We provide the UI. It's fine. They're good with it. We do whatever customizations are required for them, but it's perfect. The companies that are doing $1 billion or more, they have far more complexity. and they have versions of composable. We can call it whatever we want to call it, but we know they're stacking best in class kind of technology together. They can pull it off because they have IT staffs that can actually manage it. The smaller companies, they do not. So the smaller companies actually use Corevist almost as their SAP IT. We find problems that they have in their ERP before they do it. I'm like, how is that even something that we were supposed to do? It doesn't matter. I have to make them successful one way or another, so I will do it. But these larger enterprises, they're really pushing us to say, hey, we would like to see more integrations from you into whatever it happens to be. And I'm super excited about one decision that I took, which was to say we are going to directly integrate into SAP BTP, which is their integration platform as a service. They told us that in order to remain or to be certified moving forward by the end of the year, that was a reality. And I commissioned a team, and we've been working on it for the better part now of a year and have made great progress. And I don't know if we'll be the first. It doesn't really matter. I just know that it will be great for our larger customers that actually want to be aligned to the SAP roadmap and have a bunch more integrations. And we'll be able to offer that soon.
And this is a very exciting opportunity, not least of which, because I know, having been in this ecosystem for many years, I know that Hybris historically, I don't know if it's true today, I would assume it's true today, because effectively Hybris has just been rebranded and then extended upon to turn it into SAP Commerce Cloud. But I know historically Hybris implementations have been very long, they have been very complex, they have required lots of custom work, and they've been historically very expensive. Historically, Hybris, it was difficult to get into Hybris for less than $1 million, and it was difficult to get a solution up and running. Pardon me. It was difficult to get a solution up and running in under a year, right? So this has historically been where the Hybris platform has sat in the pantheon of the SAP ecosystem. It's big, it's complex. Pardon me, I'll edit all that out. It's big, thank you. It's big, it's complex, it's comprehensive, and it is very flexible, but in terms of actually delivering on what the platform is capable of, requires a lot of development firepower that is very expensive, and it's very niche in the marketplace. You won't find too many developers out there in the marketplace, for example, that can develop on SAP Commerce Cloud, Magento, Shopify, and BigCommerce. Like they're basically Hybris developers, SAP Commerce Cloud developers, and that's all they do. That's what they've built their career on the back of, and it's almost, if we look at Salesforce Commerce Cloud, it's very similar. People that work in the Salesforce ecosystem, that's where they work. They oftentimes do not move from outside that ecosystem, because once you're embedded in it and you spend the many years to get deeply embedded in that ecosystem and get the knowledge that you need to have to be able to build comprehensive solutions on top of a platform with the breadth that they have, you oftentimes aren't going to go anywhere else, because it's a specialized skill set that's compensated very well for that specialization. And SAP is very similar. And to me, it feels like this is a natural business opportunity for a platform like Corevist. If you can get up and running in less than 12 months, if you can have more flexibility at a lower price point, and ultimately with much, much lower complexity for maintenance, upgrades, enhancement, extensions over time, and you make it easier for the merchant to actually get onboarded into the platform, it feels like this is a pretty clear value proposition over the native SAP offering.
You nailed it. That is 100% correct. And I'll give you some numbers so that you can compare and contrast. And remember, I'll start off by saying that we love SAP. We partner with SAP big time. We actually respect all of our competitors. Actually, we respect because we realize they offer some kind of value into this ecosystem too. And I believe in the world of plenty. The idea is grow the pie, not just split it up. It's okay, how do we deliver more value to these customers? And sometimes it's not Corevist, it'll be someone else. But back to when you're considering Salesforce Commerce, when you're considering SAP, when you're considering, insert name large player here, Adobe.
Oracle, whatever.
Oracle, whatever. It's just a very well-known brand. They have great product, but it costs, as you said, $1 million, 12 months to implement, and you need these highly specialized resources to run it. We had done some analysis where I had where I personally had looked and I'd said, wow, some of the most expensive resources out there are Salesforce Commerce resources. They're just so specialized. They're awesome, but you're going to pay. If that's your interest, sure, no problem. So Corevist, to give you an order of magnitude on the difference between $1 million and 12 months and whatever is the implementation cost, out for our base implementation, this is every deal's priced slightly differently depending on what exactly they want, but I'm going to give you a rough order of magnitude because it's not wrong. For our base implementation, you're talking $100,000 as their annual subscription, $150,000 as their implementation costs, 3 months from start to finish. We have these 49 direct integration points into SAP. My technical staff, they get really annoyed when I say I can be live in 1 hour. And they're like, I'm like, yes, we deploy 2 things and we're live. Now, granted, then we have to do the configuration and bring them up to speed. But that's one of the beauties of going with a light solution like Corevist. And I am telling you, for B2B use cases, those larger enterprises that we just talked about, we have all of the capabilities that they do, all of them. Global, everything. It doesn't matter. We have perfected those use cases. B2C, those are actually superior to what we can deliver. There's no doubt about it. But if you're looking for a B2B solution, ours is super lightweight. The total cost of ownership is lower. Sure, there may be some larger enterprises who require more integrations than maybe what we offer out of the box. And for those, we'll say, yes, we'll build those integrations, and then their implementation costs can go up a little bit. But yeah, if you're just looking for a solid solution, I can have you up in 3 months. It's
Wow.
like we do it.
The value prop seems pretty darn clear, and to speak to some of those other integrations that oftentimes come up in the B2B world, even if somebody's running SAP maybe as their ERP, maybe and or as their CRM, they might also be running a PIM system. They might also be running an external CDP platform, or they might be running an external CRM or an external customer service platform or an external CPQ platform or something like that that you have to integrate with over and above just the ERP integration. And that must be where some of the additional complexity can come in, especially if you're a billion-dollar business that's in the manufacturing world or wholesale distribution world. Sometimes you are connected to multiple supplier systems, multiple external ERPs, multiple external PIM systems, multiple external marketplaces for that matter. You might be connected to lots of different ecosystem partners that have to ultimately tie into your commerce platform, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we can look at the PIMs just to pick 3 companies that are pretty well known: Akineo, Salsify, and InRiver. We integrate with them. So if someone were to say, hey, what about, we're like, it's perfect. We actually love the fact that you use those PIM solutions. They're world class. They do exactly what they're supposed to do: federate a bunch of information, make it super easy for non-technical users to update the information and make sure it's populated correctly. We love that. So we offer those types of integrations right away. The CRM integration, which there's one that I think in time we will do, will be into Salesforce, because I don't know what market share they have, but it's a lot. And it's a great system. We use it to run our own sales pipeline and our deals. And then now we're actually getting pushed on marketing automation solutions. So we're going to have to make a decision. All right, is it HubSpot? Is it Pardot? Is it Marketo? And I list them out specifically those because we're using third-party databases and sources to say, okay, what does our target market and our existing clients, what do they use for these marketing automation solutions? And I'll just make it up. Let's say I figure out that 70% of my customers and 75% of my target is using HubSpot. I'm going to integrate with HubSpot because that's a logical one. And I just have my developers start to put that on the roadmap and move forward. There's one other thing that we've done with product that's actually pretty cool. And if you want, I'll get you a copy. You can put it in the link for your audience to check out. About a year ago, I asked the question, how do we know if we're delivering value? And of course, everybody's, because
we deliver value.
Of course we deliver. They're paying us, and we did it, and we answer their questions. I'm like, not good enough. I said, start thinking like the general manager or the CFO who's having to make really tough economic decisions in the 2022 downturn, which continued into 2023, and that it's maybe now starting to come out. And I'll share with your audience what we look at to actually gauge what we think is going to happen in this industry affecting the B2B manufacturers. But back to my point, I was saying there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better dashboard than just, here's what GA4 says, or anything else. So I said, I'm going to actually build V1, and I'm going to pretend that I know nothing except that I'm a business user. And I literally started to map out. And after about 20 iterations, we figured out several parameters that could actually point out, this is your ROI on this platform. And then that thought process was reinforced by a management consultant named Victor Cheng, who's phenomenal. And he has done these transformations before. And he had said, Andy, you've got to actually embed that into the product so that they know right away if they want to look at it and then they want to have questions. So we did that. And then the next thing, because these things are related, I ended up hiring the former CIO of Crayola. And I said, look, I'm not hiring you to be a CIO. We don't need a CIO. But I want you to bring me the perspective of what the customer base has or needs, thinks about. And I said, I'd love for you to lead account management. So can you imagine? We have the CIO, former CIO, technologist leading our account management. The conversations that he has with them they're fantastic. They're way better than anything I could do.
Because he's CIO
been in their
level,
shoes.
right?
Exactly. So it's like he can go up and he can speak the technology track, but he can go all the way up on the business side. So with him, he's been now going out to have one-on-ones with our customers to say, here's how you're performing. Here are the metrics. These are the core ones. They're in the platform. Oh, and by the way, not only how you're performing, but we actually have ideas for how you can improve. And for us, and I don't know what it's like for the other B2B platforms, I suspect it's similar, but the number one driver is engagement and adoption. And I guess it starts first with adoption and then we can get to engagement. And what I noticed, and this is yet something else that I didn't know, and it wasn't one of my 4 things when I started, unfortunately, but in 2000, and this is a theory, and I'd be curious to get your point of view on it, that the customers that bought in 2021, several of them were not ready for what they just bought. In other words, they were saying, oh my gosh, global pandemic, selling face-to-face is no longer an option, I got to go digital. And then they bought a bunch of platforms. But they didn't actually think through how hard was it going to be to get adoption, to get their end customers on the platform. And we're proving that every day. And now, to put a bow on this thing, now we're even offering an adoption service. We're like, it's okay, we're going to offer that to the customer. It's like, you want us to do the adoption for you, we will do it as a service. Because at the end of the day, I got to make sure my customers win. I can't win and them not win. They have to win. And whatever it takes, we're willing to do it. So
it's a very interesting point that you raise, and I'm finding now that a lot of the work that I do with B2B merchants now is adoption planning consultation, meaning that when I get in there, they might have brought me in to scope out a solution or a tech stack or whatever it might be, or an integration architecture, whatever it might be. But ultimately, as part of my initial discovery, one of the first things I do is ask them questions around adoption planning, not just in the customer base, but internally. Do you have an internal adoption plan? Do you have an internal and an external adoption plan? Have you thought about that? Have you canvassed? Have you questioned? Have you had dialogues? Have you had workshops? Have you had focus groups? Have you had any of those things? Have you even talked to your customer about what they consider e-commerce to even be to them? Because oftentimes what I find is that when they haven't done this work, and I go in and I help them with this work, and I start helping them with the dialogue with their customers, and I lead oftentimes the workshops on their behalf with their customers, and they're an observer, and I ask the questions, and I have the dialogue with the customer. Oftentimes what they consider as the company to be e-commerce is very different to what their customers think of as e-commerce. Oftentimes they're going, hey, we do EDI integration. What do we need a self-service e-commerce site for? Or, hey, we do e-procurement with you. So what do we need self-service e-commerce for? But then when you start talking through all of the use cases other than the buy now button, all of a sudden then their eyes light up. The customer's eyes light up and they go, oh, you mean I can check and I can research the catalog online. I can search for products online. I can download spec sheets. I can download exploded drawings. I can see images. I can see videos. I can see content around a product. Oh, you mean I can check availability of a product? Oh, you mean I can do CPQ online? Oh, you mean I can lodge an RMA request online through this new e-commerce portal? Oh, you mean I can download my invoices and pay my invoices and statements online and request copies online? Oh, heck, that's amazing. We would love to have those additional digital services. And so they may not be super excited about the buy now button, but they're super excited about what I consider digital commerce services, more broadly speaking. They're super excited about that kind of stuff, and they're super excited about requesting new products that their supplier will procure for them through this e-commerce platform and assigning a SKU to it so it's available in their private catalog. Oh, you mean I can log in and I can see my MOQ requirements and my buying increments and all those things, and I can see and I can track my shipping all the way from the time that an order leaves your warehouse to the time it arrives in my warehouse. I can log in and I can see the status of these orders all the way through the supply chain process. So what I found, and I'd be interested in your thinking here, is that oftentimes the brands that are looking at implementing B2B e-commerce for the first time, they only measure ROI on the percentage of transactions that move from either the direct sales channel or the customer service sales channel to the self-service e-commerce sales channel, and that's how they measure success. But what I encourage my clients to do is expand your vision of what success is to include what your customers say success is for them. And if you do that, then all of a sudden the ROI explodes on these projects, because even if they don't necessarily execute the transaction directly in the e-commerce site, within 6 months, if they're using all these other digital services online, we get a much higher adoption rate in month 6 and month 12, because they go, I'm doing all this stuff in the portal anyway. Now I might as well just do the buy now in the portal at the same time. Cool. I can upload a CSV of the items that I want to order to populate the cart. Oh, cool. Oh, I can copy and paste my PO number in with the order so that it's linked to the order online. Amazing. Cool. I can have shopping lists for each of my locations that are pre-authorized for that location. Amazing. And it's about how we initiate the dialogue with the end customer that makes all the difference about what we consider success factors of a project. Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening.
I think that's spot on. If you think of when one of these projects is going to get greenlit, and I'm just going to put on the CFO hat for a second. CFO says, so how many new sales are we going to get? I know what my gross margin is, blah, 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 and they do that. And that's not the whole ROI story. And in fact, when you see my dashboard, you will actually say, oh, Andy actually did do it the right way. We track customer service events. We track which ones they are, and we give then credit to the platform for driving some. We do it through a cost savings mechanism, but we do it that way so that we're trying to capture the percentage of basically dollars that are saved by moving someone onto an online platform. And then we count the number of transactions. It's super helpful. And we have some, that's why they use it. They're like, look, we just need to offload these customer service transactions here because they're not prone to error. Obviously, there's no fat fingering anything. You're getting the information directly from SAP, so they're not misquoting. Hey, by the way, when the sales, and we have one customer who only uses it with their internal sales team. They want 100% of every order placed in their company to come through the Corevist platform and go into SAP. Why? Because they're like, there's no price mistake that's going to be made. It's all customized to that account. They're getting the right order quantity that's available to that account. In fact, as another digression, the number one page on our website, on our whole website, talks about ATP, which is available to promise. And it's just SAP's algorithms that are actually kind of figuring out, okay, based on inventory amounts, based on reordering amounts, how much are we going to be able to allocate to X, to Y, and to Z? And it's fantastic logic. We bring that into the portal. And so people are like, this is great. As you were saying, they're like, hey, I want to check on the status of this. Hey, can I actually buy this? Hey, what would it be? And then I don't know if you know him, but he's worked in the industrial distribution industry and wholesaler for forever. Ian Heller, you may know him. He runs his own large consulting shop. And Ian and I went to grad school together at Kellogg, at
Oh, cool.
Northwestern. So I've known Ian for forever. And Ian has a concept where he goes, it's the assist. It's like the point guard in a basketball team passing the ball off to the forward, and then you see the forward score the ball, but it was that point guard that did the assist, and you have to actually take credit for those things as part of the solution because it made a difference. There was a reason why so-and-so bought, whether it was today or 6 months from now, but it was because of these assists that happened along the way. Ian has a great concept on it that I'd encourage you to at some point talk to him about. It's really neat.
Wow. Wow. And look, I think you hit the nail on the head here is that I think some platform vendors that shall remain unnamed, I think that their laser focus, especially in the B2B world, in the B2C and D2C world, it's a little bit different because their focus is on the transaction, their focus is on securing the order, their focus is on cross-selling, upselling, remarketing, customer retention, all those things, right? The B2C world is a different beast altogether. But in the B2B world, there are so many high-cost services and touch points that happen within a B2B enterprise servicing other businesses that they have such a high cost and such a high time component associated with them that if you can offload even a portion of those services to a digital services layer, it dramatically increases the efficiency of that business. And it means that, and the other thing I like to talk about in the B2B world is the fact that I don't know a single salesperson in the world who likes admin. And what I find is when I start consulting to B2B brands, upwards of 20 to 60% for the brands that track their sales reps' time, whether it be a field sales rep, whether it be a BDR, a BDM, an SDR, whatever it might be, an account manager, whatever they call it inside their business, the key sales function as it meets the customer. Oftentimes we find that when we do the research, that 20 to 60% of that time is spent on admin functions, not going out and hunting new customers, not going out and building the relationship with existing customers, not landing and expanding and saying, hey, we supplied these 5 categories of products to you today, but we've got these other 5 categories that you might be interested in that we can service you across. So not having these discussions, not schmoozing, not taking them to lunches, not taking them to sports games into the box seats and having a conversation. They're not doing all the things that we typically expect salespeople to do because they spend so much time keying in orders into ERP systems, or going into a network drive to pull down a PDF of a spec sheet, or an exploded drawing, or whatever it might be, or there's what I like to call a ton of institutional or tribal knowledge in a lot of these big B2B brands where they've had people working on their sales teams sometimes 10, 20, 30 years plus. They're so deeply embedded in the ecosystem of what they do. They're so well known and they're so trusted. But so much of that knowledge is up here and it's nowhere else. And that absolutely terrifies me when I get into these businesses and I start getting under the bonnet of how they work. Now, they offer a tremendous service to their customers because of this deep tribal knowledge within the business. But unless we can get that out of their heads and into a system that is one to many instead of one to one, that business is at risk, especially if that person retires, that person passes away, that person moves on to a competitor, whatever it might be. Unless we can get that capability and that knowledge and that information and that data out of their heads and into a useful one-to-many solution, that business is at risk, and they're unnecessarily at risk.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm going to give you one other. Let's say that your business is making made-to-order, highly specialized product, very expensive. If you ship them, if you make the wrong thing, you eat it. It's not, I'll just refactor it and send it to the next. No, this is a piece of glass that's going to go on an office building, or this is a conveyor belt. Whatever it happens to be, there's the concept called variant configuration, where you actually start to say, okay, it's this, but not this, this, but not this, this, but not this. And it's pretty complex. Guess what? All of that's been coded in SAP. We access that. So now we've had GM say to us, like, we want the salesperson to not use the PDF, to not use the Excel spreadsheet, not because we don't trust them, but We don't trust them. We'd rather have the most accurate information, and we know that's in the ERP. Can your system help that salesperson quickly configure a product and issue a quote? Absolutely. And that's, again, is there a sale there? Well, maybe down the road, but you have definitely de-risked it. It's not just Fred or Susie who's the smart 30-year veteran says, oh no, you got to do it this way because of this and this. No, that's all in the ERP. Expose it and make it simple so that a brand new sales rep can come in with reasonable training and say, oh yeah, I can actually bang out this quote really quickly for this customer or prospect, depending on how they've priced. I think you're right on. If that tribal knowledge walks out, it's gone.
You got to codify it in some way, and you got to put it in a system that's replicatable and consistent for the customer experience as well. I think one of the other things that I've seen, and I'd love your take on this, is that oftentimes merchants in the B2B space, they might not want their salespeople working directly in the ERP, but until they have some sort of a technology layer over the top of that they can offload to those teams, they have no choice. So oftentimes they go, look, we want pretty much the CFO and a few other select administrators, etc., working in the core ERP. We don't want our salespeople in there messing around with price lists and messing around with customer account data and doing but we have no choice because we've got no other way for them to access that system short of writing some sort of custom UI or custom applet or widget over the top of this. They have to be logged into our ERP system to do their jobs. And oftentimes, but when they implement an e-commerce layer or a portal layer of some variety, a digital sales and service layer over the top of that, allows them to be operated arm's length to the ERP. And so this is another benefit that a lot of businesses don't necessarily realize when they're starting to look at their e-commerce system that's going to sit over top of their ERP is, great, cool. If I can manage CPQ, if I can manage the digital data that I expose to my customers, if I can control the restricted catalog rules that for each customer, if I can assign them a price list, if I can negotiate within certain parameters of prices at the SKU level, if I can do all these things, and I can do that in the digital commerce layer, then I never have to actually even log in to the ERP and run the risk of messing something up fundamental in the ERP. And this is a benefit that I think a lot of brands don't think about when they're solely focused on how many transactions are we going to get through this new e-commerce website to justify the spend.
We see that. We see that all the time. In fact, when I was new to e-commerce, I was the how many transactions are going through the register. That's it, because that's all I knew. But one of my early prospects, early meaning after I joined Corevist, and they were actually out of the Middle East. They said, look, we actually need your platform because we don't trust the people, the CSRs or the salespeople to directly touch SAP. It's not that we don't trust them that they're going to do something on purpose that's mischievous. It's not that. It's literally going into the ERP. It's complex. It's scary. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
it takes fully trained specialists,
and it takes a whole lot of time of training too.
And so that was the point. This particular general manager said, "Hey, by the way, on my CSRs, in their particular case, he goes, we're having turnover every, we'll call it 9 to 12 months. It was, and he goes, I need a very simple way for them to interact with the ERP without screwing up the data that's in the ERP, without misquoting a customer." And so they looked at Corevist and they said, this actually makes sense. This is super light and it's really easy. We've thought through how many touches, how many times you have to press a button to get to the end of whatever is your desired use case. And so it worked. But that's exactly right. You do not want non-trained staff in your SAP ERP. You screw that up and you may shut down your company. There are ways to do it. And so that's what we've done with our 49 integration points. We are pulling the data and information and the processes from SAP and then bringing them to a simplified portal experience that's relevant, whether you're a CSR, whether you're a sales rep, or whether you're an end client. And so we know that those are the three that are typically interacting with our experience, and we just got to perfect those use cases for them so that they're in, They get the information they want and they're gone. They are not shopping. It's not like what you and I may do on Amazon where we're browsing and we're like, hey, this is interesting. These guys have a busy plate. They need to get in, get out, and get on to the next thing because they have production in mind. So super, super interesting. That your point is spot on. I'll tell you one thing that we've done to help extend the usefulness of the platform. We already do EDI. We're like, okay, I got it. It's very common. And it's okay, hey, do you get any manual orders? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. We get emailed PDFs all the time. So what if they emailed the Corevist platform and no human touched it and we instantly posted it into SAP and shipped a truck of whatever it was that you wanted? And they're like, how do you do that? So we did version 1. This predates me. This was started like in 2020, 21. But now I've taken my head of development. I said, I want you to redo this product before we sell the next version of it. And I want you to leverage AI. I want you to go look at standard AI tools, whether it's from Google, whether it's from a Microsoft, Amazon, it doesn't matter, SAP, large companies who have spent the tens of millions of dollars to actually get that AI tool. And now we have the use case where we can actually train easily, really easily, incoming PDFs from a variety of accounts. It's almost like facial recognition, but it's not. It's invoice, purchase order recognition. And then go ahead and load that right into SAP. We can have a human in the middle. We can say, hey, this is what the amounts are. Do you want to hit the yes, I agree button? Or do you want it to go, without a human in the middle? And so we've just done that because that's been as a CEO, sometimes you'll get questions from the board. What's your answer to AI? What are you doing? And yes, I could do better search on our platform and things of that nature. But I'm like, this is an answer to AI where now I can actually take a very small development team, literally 2 to 3 people, create that product. Now I can go to a customer and say, this is not going to take 10 hours of anything to deploy. This is give me 1,000 of these invoices and let the technology do it. And then we'll spot check to make sure it's solid and we're up and running. Again, just looking for another way to solve their problem. And who knows, maybe no one actually went in, and maybe for that customer, no one actually goes into the portal. They will, because they'll want to check their order status, as you said, and hey, when's this thing shipping? Oh, and can I pay here and all that kind of stuff. But the actual order came in through a PDF that was emailed in.
So, I mean, these types of things, and even down to the payments layer, adding the ability, instead of just purely paying on account, having the ability to pay via ACH, having the ability to pay via business credit card, being able to pay on terms, or being able to bring in third-party payments layers, Hokoto, being able to bring in Balance, being able to bring in these other payments layers and payments providers into the B2B ecosystem and making those and surfacing those at checkout for these buyers. This can offload a whole lot of financial risk. It can speed up the turnaround times on payments. It can reduce the time to pay from 90 days to 30 days or 60 days. When we think about the digitalization of a whole bunch of these transaction-related services, it's pretty phenomenal, right? And again, I go back to the point that there are so many services that we bring to bear within this digital commerce stack that are not necessarily directly related to the buy now button. And this is something that I think you've hit on in multiple ways, but I think it's something that bears repeating because I consistently see this when I work with new clients for the very first time. They're so laser focused on just the ROI of this project is going to be based on within the next 12 months post live, what percentage of our orders migrate from manual processes into the e-commerce platform. And I think it's really short-sighted, and I think you've covered that really well. Now, in terms of what's on your radar for the next 12 to 18 months, is there anything your customers are asking you for today that you don't do yet, or is there any gaps in the market that you see that you say, hey, we don't do this yet, but we think this is a massive opportunity, and we'd like to be able to do this within the next 12 to 18 months?
So it's a really good question. One of the things that we've charged the person who I mentioned that was the former CIO of Crayola said, hey, I'd like you to do a technology landscape mapping of all of our accounts and go as broad as you can. And sometimes the accounts will freely share this information and sometimes they won't. They have their own reasons for wanting to share it or not. In our case, because of his background, they share it because they're like, oh, you're one of us. You speak the secret handshake. It's yes, just trying to help. And so he's charged with actually developing that future roadmap now that he's come into the organization, and we'll be unveiling it in the next quarter. But short term, and short term really means in the next 3 to 6 months, I will tell you, it's SAP BTP integration. That, and I want to go, I do want to share something about partners that we partner with and partners that we tried to partner with and it failed. I think it'll be interesting to your audience. But SAP BTP integration, I'm doing it for two reasons. One, to better partner with the SAP BTP sales community, and to better partner with the large systems integrators. I had tried and failed to partner with the traditional SIs that do e-commerce, whether it was Gorilla or we know the names. They're terrific companies. Yep. They really are awesome. But there was nothing in it for them to partner with Corevist. They're like, God, you guys are so simple.
You cover all the bases. Where do we
go? So what are we going to do? You're an all-in-one solution. What are we going to do? So initially I tried to partner with them, failed. And then I'm not that smart. So it took me a little while to say, what do I do differently? And this is where it helps that I grew up in the SAP world, in the SAP ecosystem. I'm like, okay, when it worked for me before, what did I do? I found a sales community inside of SAP where I could help them. It's not about them helping me. That's where most partners make a mistake. It's not about SAP helping Corevist. That's not the idea. It's about Corevist helping SAP do great things for the SAP customer. And once you get that going in your head, then you can have better discussions. You're like, hey, they're struggling to actually figure out the value in BTP. No problem. Do you realize if we bolt on Corevist and I can make it attractive from a pricing perspective, you can light up the ROI instantly. Deloitte did some great research. I can't think of his name, but I do have the link if you ever want it, where they said, hey, sometimes it's hard to just get the ROI on an ERP deal. However, if you can bolt on a B2B platform, your costs may go up by X, but your ROI goes through the roof and fast. You don't have to wait 3 years to get this thing paid out. And so when I learned that, Deloitte had helped me with that thinking. I was like, okay, then let's look at other technologies that are important to SAP. SAP, number one, is an ERP company. The second most important thing that they're chasing today, to my knowledge, is around BTP. It's not commerce.
Yes.
It's BTP. So I said, let's align with BTP. And then we went to Sapphire, their big trade event in Orlando 2 months ago. And we said, we're going to meet with large generic systems integrators. And by generic, I don't mean that they're bad. These are the largest consulting companies on the planet. And we said, let's talk to you guys about what do you do with BTP? And they're like, what do you mean? It's competitive. There's 4 of you trying to sell the same BTP solution to the same person. How can we differentiate your offering with Corevist? I am telling you, that will unlock our revenue stream. Unlike anything that's ever happened here before. We're in the early phases, but I am super excited about it. As you can tell, I'm like, this is really great because I think we can make a big difference for SAP systems integrators and for the end clients all at once. And if I do all those 3, I win.
Wow, absolutely. Finding these GTM unlocks or these joint GTM unlocks can make the difference between success and failure for platforms like yours. And obviously, being an additional tool in the sales rep's tool belt to help close SAP deals and say, look, not only are we going to close you on SAP, we're going to close you on BTP, and we're going to close you on commerce, right? This now becomes a very compelling offering, even if the end customer doesn't want to go SAP Commerce Cloud, but they want something lighter weight.
They want something lighter weight.
There's an option here, right? Because they're already spending a fortune on SAP implementation. They're already spending a fortune on BTP implementation. The last thing they want to do is also go and spend a third fortune on commerce necessarily. And so if you are an alternate option for them outside of the standard, the Commerce Cloud implementations, what an awesome 1-2 punch for the SAP community. Amazing. Now, look, we've had a fantastic conversation. An hour has absolutely flown by. I really appreciate it.
Really has.
You're clearly very knowledgeable. I've really enjoyed this. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. You ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. Mr. Andy Martin from Corevist, what is your question for me today?
Okay, it's personal.
Yes.
All right, it's personal. What are you doing in Puebla, Mexico?
Very good question. Absolutely love it. Look, Grew up in Southern California. Moved to New Zealand in my early 20s because my grandfather was a Kiwi and my parents, my sister, and myself were looking for a new lifestyle. So we moved to New Zealand, became dual citizens, lived there for almost 30 years. Met my wife. She's a Kiwi, born and raised, and she had never lived outside of New Zealand before. And my sister married a Kiwi, and they live in Brisbane with my mom and my two nephews. And we were looking for a real big change, and we got it by moving to New Zealand. You may have heard of this little thing called COVID. And unfortunately, New Zealand handled it really, in my opinion, very poorly and basically locked down. It was one of the most locked down countries in the entire world.
I remember Australia was as well. So
yeah, so Australia and New Zealand, two of the most locked down countries in the entire
ANZ.
world. Little island nation, easy to close the borders, easy to keep people locked in, easy to keep people locked out. And it had a devastating impact on me, my wife, our life. We're big travelers. We don't jab and we never will. And we were treated as second-class citizens for 3 years. And the Prime Minister at the time, Jacinda Ardern, was very clear about the fact that we're going to create a two-tier society. You're going to have less freedom if you're unjabbed, and you're going to have more freedom if you're jabbed. And this was from the highest pulpit in the land. And I'm a big freedom guy. Maybe it's my American heritage. I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm a big personal freedom guy.
Sure.
And that whole scenario around COVID was pretty traumatic for both me and my wife. And there were lots of other reasons to leave New Zealand. Getting back closer to North America, or in North America, where I already had clients anyway in North America. I had grown up in Southern California, close to Mexico, and so I'd been to Mexico multiple times in my younger years. Loved Mexico. Love the people, love the food, love the culture, love the weather. The cost of living here is a fraction, literally a tiny fraction of the cost of living in New Zealand. And there was just lots of opportunities for us here that we could not. New Zealand's pretty remote, so to get anywhere, even in non-COVID times, to get to North America,
difficult.
to get to conferences, to get to Europe, to get to Asia, it's hard and it's expensive, right? And it's time consuming, plus the time zone is difficult. And we just thought that there was lots of opportunities for us here. Finally, Mexico has one of the friendliest immigration policies in the world. And so we explored what that looked like to get temporary residency. We found out we qualified, went down to Wellington, got interviewed by the consulate there, and were approved. And we've been here for a year and a half now. Absolutely love it. We spent all of 2023 traveling around Mexico. We did about 20,000 kilometers by car in 2023, checking out all the places that were on our short list. And Puebla, funnily enough, was not even on our short list. It was a waypoint between two major destinations, between Mexico City and Oaxaca. As we were going through and stayed here one night, we fell in love with the place. We completed the rest of our trip and said, we'd like to come back and spend a bit more time in Puebla to see if it's a place we can make a life. We came back, we spent an initial month here, absolutely loved it, and we're in the process of buying a townhouse here.
Oh, congratulations. That's really exciting. I love that you're able to blend what you wanted to do personally with professional, because now you're in the North American time zone.
Exactly.
Like you said, and I had to do that a little bit with Corevist, where I'm like, our first focus is North America. And yes, we will service accounts in Asia, in Europe, in wherever but it made it a lot easier from a headcount management. Also hey, you're just in the same time zone. And that just makes everything so easy. So, well, congratulations. I will come visit at some point, or I will extend an offer. If you are in the Raleigh area, come see me, or in Florida, because that's where I have my home.
I'll take you up on it, and I'll flip that script and open our home to you. It's going to be there's only me, my wife, and our dog, and it's a 3-bedroom place that we're buying. So we'll have plenty of room for visitors and guests. So you're more than welcome. First round of margaritas are on me when you get here. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile as well as the Corevist website in the show notes. Other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you if they want to talk about commerce, if they want to talk about B2B, if they want to talk about integration with SAP, etc., if they want to just talk about B2B commerce in general, how do you like people to get a hold of you?
So the easiest, probably the best way, is that they hit me up on LinkedIn, but they don't just generically say request connection. If you do that, I usually say no, because I don't have the time. I just want, and I want it to be sincere, whatever it is that you're looking for. I don't want I get the fake platitudes of, I'm really impressed by what you've done at Corevist, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is there something you'd like to sell me? Tell me that, because then I can say, yeah, we're interested in this, or it's not going to fit. If you're genuinely interested in my story, in learning more about how I became an entrepreneur, the many mistakes that I've made, this podcast would go for about 24 days if you're like, hey, just talk about mistakes. And I'm always happy to share that story with people. But typically it's going to be LinkedIn as the first outreach. And then if it's we want to explore Corevist as a platform, in that case, then I have folks they can speak with me, but they can also speak with some folks on our technical team or on our sales team, depending on what questions that they want. But LinkedIn tends to work pretty well. As long as it's not a generic, hey, request connection, then it's usually like it's not going to happen. So.
Love it. Love it. That's very reasonable and respectful. I appreciate that. Andy, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fabulous conversation. I wish you and the Corevist team every success, and I hope to see you at B2B Online Florida later this year. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.